Ben & Jerry's yesterday and I just wanted a cone. Just wanted a nice, fresh, warm cone. So I walk over to the counter and I was like, hi, can I just have a waffle cone? And she was like, yeah, sure. Here you go. That'll be $2. So I was like, okay. I go to put my card in and of course the tipping screen comes up. And I was like, I didn't say this out loud, but in my head I was like, I'm not tipping you on a cone. You literally just handed me a cone. And I'm also like, the percentages were insane. I was like, I'm not tipping you $1 on a $2 cone that you just handed me. I'm not. So she hands me my cone. I put my card in. It gives me like, how much do you want to tip? I hit no tip. And the cashier goes to my face, to my actual face. Like on no planet is that ever appropriate. Even if I got $100 worth of ice cream and I don't tip you, you can't to the customer. On top of that, Miss Girl, what were you expecting I tipped you to hand me a cone? There wasn't even a service being exchanged. It was an exchange. It was a transaction. It wasn't even an act of service.
Hello everyone, it's Emmanuel Cooke. Today we will be reacting to a new video. And I hope that you guys enjoy the video.
Am I the only person that has realized that tipping has become so normalized in Texas? Almost every single establishment that you walk into will ask for a tip at the end of the service. Like, I completely understand if you're a server or if your job relies on tips so that you can make your money. However, I was shocked that some of these places were asking for tips. So a month ago, I went to the thrift store, and this wasn't a regular thrift store. It was a second-hand thrift store. Not gonna lie, the prices were really expensive for it being a thrift store. Like, y'all know y'all bought them for like $2. Why are y'all selling them for $45? Anyway, I found a shirt. It was $45. I was like, whatever, I really like it. I took it up to the cash register. The guy let me know my total, and then he told me that there was a question on the iPad, and I was like, I already know what it's gonna say. I look at the iPad and it's asking for a tip, and it didn't start at 15%. It said 20, 25, or 30% tip. I was like, I don't know about y'all, but I get anxiety and I end up tipping. So I gave a tip on top of my $45 shirt. And then on top of that, I went to Crumble Cookie and I went to the kiosk, and apparently now you can order your cookie yourself. So I took my own order, and at the end of the order, it asked me if I wanted a tip. I was like, tip who?
So over tipping, it's gone too far. And so here's my new perspective, my new strategy when it comes to tipping. Number one, I am not tipping anywhere where they ask me to tip before I experience the service. For example, I went and got a $9 smoothie the other day, and right when I was like ordering my smoothie, I was like, oh, I'll get the breakfast smoothie. Then they're like, okay, it's just gonna ask you a few questions. The answer is no. One, y'all haven't made my smoothie. 2, I haven't tasted my smoothie. 3, I don't even know if I'm gonna like this smoothie yet. Why am I tipping? Like, I'm not tipping. Also, it's a smoothie. It's not like a sit-down restaurant. Like, what are we doing? There's a lot of places that make sense to tip, like restaurants. You experience the food, you experience the service, you're sitting down, you're being served. Of course you leave a tip there. But again, that tip is based off the experience, okay? Same thing, nail salons. You get your nails done, you pay and you tip based off the service, okay? I'm not tipping preemptively. So that goes for coffee shops where they turn it around, ask you questions, ice cream shops, anywhere like that. Ice cream shops alone is just a no for me. You scooped my ice cream for 15 seconds and put it in a cup. Like, no. You guys are paid hourly, like hourly rates. If they're not enough, talk to your employer. But why is that burden being put on the consumers? I will never understand. As a business owner, imagine if every single time you guys bought a planner from my site, it was like, oh, just leave a tip. Leave a tip for what? We hand make all your planners, and I'm still like, leave a tip for what? No.
Tipping culture is not out of control. You guys are just assholes, which is what I used to think until my parents were visiting me and their like air conditioning broke. So I drive my dad over to pick up the car, and he comes back with the keys, about to like walk over to where the car is, and he's kind of distraught, which is not like him. And he's like, I always tip, but I'm confused. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I literally just paid, I don't know, $500 to have my car fixed. And then the guy swivels at the car mechanic, swivels the screen around and is like, you want to tip 20%, 25%, 30%. And he's like, I never don't push a button for a percentage to tip, but I didn't tip. Are we tipping car mechanics now? And I was like, no, we're definitely not tipping car mechanics now, at least not that I know about. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's pushing it.
I
think it's safe to say that we can all agree collectively in the United States that tipping culture has gone way too far. Call me cheap, call me frugal. I am quite frugal actually, but call me whatever you want to call me. I do not care. I'm done with the tipping culture in this country. So I went to I went to go pick up my plant, my alocasia, at this plant store, like a very local plant store in my neighborhood. Say hi, Ali. I'm gonna name her Ali Wong, back there, as you can see. And I went in there already knowing what I'm going to get. I did not bother anyone. I did not ask for any help. I walked around the store myself. I picked up my plants myself. Nothing. There was no exchange of conversation with a single sales associate. Not one. So I got up there and I took out my card to pay. And this sales associate, who didn't even bother to say, hello, welcome in, nothing. After I paid, turns her little iPad around. And I'm sure this is coming from the people at the top. They're asking them to do this. She turns her iPad around and her iPad had no option but 20%, 30%, and 50% tip on top of a $30 plants that I picked out myself. And then there ensues a very long stare down, in R. Kelly's word. And I look at her and she looked at me and I looked at her, because what you're not going to do is emotionally blackmail me with my own money. So we're sitting, what feels like I think it must have been like 5 minutes or maybe 5 seconds. I don't know. It was a state of purgatory that felt forever and a day. Then she proceeds to let out a very long theatrical sigh, flips the iPad around, does something in there and comes back around and gives me my receipt. And so I grabbed my receipt and I left, and I grabbed my McDonald's, my chicken nuggets, honey, with the money that I was going to use to tip her. And I was never going to tip her. I am done. This being rude about it, and the fact that like almost everywhere you go now, you don't even get a choice anymore. Like, you don't get a choice. You must tip, is insane. Why would I tip on something that I just picked up myself? I didn't ask for help. What am I tipping you for? For your actual job? Why is your boss not paying you enough? And why are you working a job where you're so angry at me for like just picking up my plants and wanting to pay? I'm done with tipping culture. I'm only tipping if I'm sitting down somewhere getting service, or my Uber driver. That's it. Most other culture, mine included, where I'm from, is insulting to just offer someone money on top of whatever their job is. Like, people would take umbrage to that, you know, like, why are you offering me money? Like, you think I'm poor or something? You're calling me poor? Why would you offer me free money? Only in America do we do this nonsense, and it has to stop. There has to be a cap on it. It's gone too far. These companies are depending on us to pay their employees' bills. It should not work like that. I understand that we all got to eat. I'm eating myself, but enough is enough.
Gratuity is not a tip to your server. We don't own the gratuity.
So I'm going to share with you guys my experience of how tipping culture has gotten way the hell out of hand, and how I had a waitress who tried to get one up over on me and it didn't work. So we had a little art festival in the town that I live in, and this was on Friday, and one of our, favorite cigar lounges is in that area. So we decided, me and my husband, to walk over there and get a couple of sticks since it was all outside, and we were going to smoke a couple of sticks while we walked around. So we go into the lounge, and when you first walk in, you got the bar over to your left, you got the humidor right in front of you. So we walked directly into the humidor. The waitress comes in and asked us if we needed help finding anything. I was like, no, we're very familiar with cigars. We got it. Told her thank you, and then we proceeded to pick out our own cigars. Now, in the humidor is a place for their retail side for you to check people out. Outside of the humidor is for the bar patrons, and they can check you out there if you're a bar patron. So she asked us if we were going to stay. I said, no, we're gonna leave. We'll just go ahead and get our cigars and go. Well, instead of checking us out inside the humidor, which I thought was a little bit weird, she checked us out outside the humidor. So my only guess on that one is that they do not have an automatic gratuity on the indoor humidor kiosk like they do on the bar side. So So she takes us out there and proceeds to check us out. Now, she did not hand me a receipt before I handed her my card, but I went ahead and gave her the card because she just kind of held her hand out. She had a little bit of attitude. So I was like, I'm just kind of, this was a weird experience. I'm just ready to go. And so I handed her my card and she hands me the receipt and then walks off. Doesn't say thank you or anything. Okay, so she had a big attitude. So anyway, I proceeded to look at the ticket and I'm like, why is there a 23% gratuity on here for cigars? I'm like, this is weird. So I went ahead and put no additional tip, signed it, and walked out the door. And as I'm walking out, I stopped my husband and we're standing outside. And I'm like, did I just tip that little girl for doing nothing? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, what the hell am I tipping her for? She didn't do nothing. He was like, I don't know, babe, but we're just going to go. We're just not going to come back. So I turn around, look at him. I'm like, no, I'm not about to do that. No, you're not getting my hard-earned money for nothing. Like, you didn't do anything to earn that. So I walked back in and I looked at the manager and I was like, excuse me. I was like, since when is it your policy to add an automatic gratuity onto somebody's check? And he goes, well, that's been our policy since COVID. And I said, really? Because I've been coming here for the last 5 years post-COVID, and that's never been the case. And he was like, yeah, I know, I recognize you. Yeah, no, I've seen you in here before. And I was like, so where'd the gratuity come from? And he was like, well, that's for our bar patrons. And I'm like, I'm not a bar patron. I literally got my own sticks, chose my own sticks, cut them, and left. I'm like, so where is this gratuity coming from? He was like, well, you should have been charged that. And I said, then I'd like a refund, please, because I'm not paying for your waitress or your cashier to do nothing, right? So anyway, he refunded us. I left, and the waitress, I guess, got pissed that I had walked back in. So because my husband was sitting out there on the patio waiting, and she started to yell at him, trying to tell him that he needed to leave because I was getting a refund on my gratuity. So I know that she knows that she did something wrong, because she wouldn't have had that much of an attitude about it if she had done the right thing. But anyway, you know what? Here's the deal. If you are in an industry that, and your business allows you to choose an option to ask your customer to give us a tip or to give you a tip, not everybody is going to tip you, and you damn sure don't deserve a tip if you don't do anything. Okay? And you know what? If you're a waitress or a bartender, you have to work for that tip. You are not entitled to anybody's money. Okay? And if you add automatic gratuity onto somebody's check, you need to expect that you are not going to get an additional tip, regardless of who you are going to have to split that automatic gratuity with. Now, listen, if it's for a large party, I completely understand the need to add additional gratuity. I'm not talking about that, okay? So, and chances are you will get more money if it is a large party. But this idea of automatic tips and gratuities onto people's checks, that is not your bar patron or your restaurant patron's job to add additional money onto it after you have already increased their tip with an automatic gratuity. If you don't want to have to split it with somebody else, and that is part of your restaurant's policy, guess what? You need to go find another job. Go find another restaurant to go work for. Go find another bar to work at, because it is not your patron's job to increase your money because you have to split it. You chose to work there. Tipping culture is way the fuck out of hand, okay? And in this economy, people don't be having extra money to be paying y'all shit.
How are we tipping? I don't know about you, but I feel like tipping culture has gotten crazy. I feel like at every turn, I'm leaving a tip for everyone. I leave my house to pick up my own food for a takeout order, I have to leave a tip. My hairstylist, who owns her own shop, sets her own prices, and probably does a bad job, I have to tip her too. Like, it's getting crazy, and as a recovering people pleaser, I just feel like I have to tip, and I've realized I gotta set a boundary on where I tip. And at this point, y'all, for all these free amazing videos, I'm gonna need y'all to leave a 20% tip right on the screen. But on a serious note, I decided to draw a line, and I have to really think about where am I going to tip and where am I not tipping anymore. And I need to stick by that boundary. Let me know what you guys think about this list, and let me know if you disagree or agree. So these are the places I'm no longer tipping at. If I get poor service in any place except for a sit-down restaurant, I'm not tipping. If I go to a counter service place, like we're talking Chipotle, ice cream, and all they're doing is just putting the food in the plate, I'm not going to tip anymore. For takeout, I'm not tipping for takeout anymore. Like, I had to leave my house to come pick up this food, most times in the cold and in the rain. I'm not going to tip. Ubers and taxis, this is kind of iffy, but you know what? Like, I don't think I'm going to tip for Ubers and taxis anymore. But this one I'm kind of iffy on. This one, actually, I'm very iffy on: beauty services. I don't know if I'm going to tip for beauty services anymore. Only if the beauty service person owns her own shop, sets her own prices. She or he should have tip built into the cost of the service. This is where I will continue tipping though. Sit down restaurants, I'm always going to tip the waitress, because waitresses sometimes are making $2 an hour. They're not even making up to minimum wage, and they rely on tips to feed themselves, right? So they are heavily relying on tips for sit down restaurants. I'm going to tip. A beauty service person that doesn't own their own shop, like they're working at the store, I will leave a tip for. Coffee shops and bartenders, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. If it's like a complicated latte order or a complicated drink order, then I will tip. Food and furniture delivery. So this is complicated. In certain cities, the tip is already added into food deliveries. So I think in that case, I probably won't tip. But if the tip isn't added, then I will tip. Hotel housekeeping is another place where I'll probably tip as well. So what do you guys think about this list? Do you think it's fair? Do you agree with it? Let me know.
I don't know if this is bitchy, but I just went to Alfred's, got a matcha with lavender, and then I went to Joe's and got a Joe's Club, which is like a chicken sandwich kind of vibe. Let's actually look at it. And every place I go to these days, there's an option to tip. And don't get me wrong, I'll definitely tip if you're bringing me my food, and if the service is great, I'll even tip more than the 18%. But I just feel like if I'm walking my ass in, going to the counter, I'm not tipping. I don't know if that's cheap, but I just don't feel the need to tip if I'm walking up to an establishment. It's just like, you're not serving me my food. Am I wrong? Am I the only one that thinks this way? I don't know. Unless I'm being served, tipping is just out of the question for me.
I don't understand. America's tipping culture is crazy. You go to the nail salon, you have to tip. You go get your hair done, you have to tip. You go get food, you have to tip. You tip on top of a tip because it's just tipping, and everybody expects to be tipped. Like, if you're working for me, you're expecting me to tip you something. Like, it's not the same in other countries. When you go to Kenya and you just do your job, people pay you for the job you've done, and if they feel like it, they tip you. Here in America, it's just crazy.
If you are not tipping 18 to 20% in America, stay home. One person not tipping is never going to affect someone like me, who is a volume bartender who does a tip pool and a tip share. However, I will tell you who it's going to affect. Server who does not share tips, who has a 4 to 5 section table. A standard serving section is around 4 to 5 tables, meaning you are responsible for those tables the whole night. You are responsible for flipping them, turning them. The more people you get flipped and turned, the more money you make. Now, let's say somebody comes and sits in your section, them and their whole family. They sit there for an hour and a half ordering food, margaritas, drinks, taking up your time and your space. When the bill comes, they don't tip $1. That server now just lost money and paid for them to dine. Because that server has to do a tip out, meaning they have to pay a bartender a percentage of the alcohol sales sold, they have to pay a food runner a percentage of the food for them to run it to your table, and they have to pay the busser who bussed your table, and sometimes the hostess who sat you. If you are not tipping 18 to 20%, you should not be going out to eat. And if you still decide to, you should tell your server at the beginning of their shift, when you first sit down, that you are not planning on tipping them, so that they can prioritize which tables they're going to take care of first. Meaning, instead of running for your 37 Diet Cokes and 4 sides of ranch, they can take care of somebody who's actually going to take care of them. Our grocery stores, there are liquor stores, beer distributors. Cook your own food, make your own drinks. Stay home if you're not going to tip. Don't even get me started on people who don't tip for elite services they choose to get done. Go to part 2 for that one.
This is a very clear indication of why I pick up my own food. Who's delivering your pizza here? You wanted a contactless delivery, and that's fine.
Did you just smell my pizza?
But it says on the app here you only left me a 15% tip.
For bringing my pizza half a block? You're lucky I left that.
That's not really cool these days.
Did you know that 57% of Americans tip between 0 and 15%? Think about that for a second.
Everyone knows these days it's 25% tips and up.
I don't know what Simpsons episode you live in, but it ain't mine.
For tips, 25% and up.
No.
So what I've been doing to kind of do the education is anyone who doesn't tip enough, I just give them a little bit of education.
Probably best that you don't, because, well, waste of your time, and honestly, I don't give a shit.
So 1 second here.
Now you're wasting both of our time.
Lily.
I'm gonna fast forward this part because it just gets more annoying.
Alright, well,
So here's the part that would really piss you off.
here's your contactless delivery. I'm just gonna leave it right here for you. Hey, get that drain fixed, yo.
So you leave a 15% tip and you still get a wet pizza. I know I'm ragging on it right now, and to be honest, there's people out there that really live off of their tips, and when I go to restaurants and I see that tip function, I pay the best I can for my meal or whatever it is. I think that we're just being bombarded by the fact that it is no longer optional, it is mandatory, and not only mandatory, it's everywhere. So it's getting harder and harder to be the type of person that wants to really tip for the sole fact that we got a good service. Now we're just tipping because we're forced to do it.
If you don't have money to tip your server and you go out to eat and don't tip your server, I have zero respect for you.
Paint me out to be the villain here because I'm not. I'm just going to share my opinion. I've never been a server, but I never would because I know the nonsense that they have to deal with on a daily basis, and I know I cannot manage it. I automatically respect someone who was or is a server. However, we need to stop blaming the customers and calling them cheap and stingy just because they don't tip, because tipping is not mandatory. It is a choice. 98% of the time when I go out to eat, I tip because my service is at least good. It just has to be good in order for you to get a tip. If your service is bad to the point where I don't want to come back, I'm not giving you a tip. But it is not the customer's job to pay your wage. We need to be taking this up with companies who are not paying their staff enough money. Tipping culture has gone insane in America. A lot of places nowadays add the gratuity to your receipt, so you don't even have the choice to choose how much you want to tip if you want to tip. Blame the wage makers, not the customers.
This whole tipping culture thing is getting so out of hand, I can't even deal with it anymore. I was at my local shopping outlet mall and I was like really hungry and I had a headache, so I was like, okay, let me get an Auntie Anne's pretzels. So I walk into the Auntie Anne's and I'm like, hey, can I just get a little thing of the pretzel bites, right? The guy at the cashier, he pulls them out, hands it to me, and he was like, would you like to add a tip? No, you literally didn't even move from the spot you were standing in. You just reached and grabbed me a cup of pretzels. No, I would not like to give you an extra $2 on top of the $8 that I just paid for these. I don't know, call me crazy, but unless someone is serving me or seating me somewhere, I just don't feel like tips are necessary. Like, I will always tip when I go out to eat somewhere. Like, obviously that's like common etiquette in America. I will never tip at a fast food restaurant or at a Starbucks or a coffee shop because, with all due respect, it's like, why do I need to tip you on top of you already overcharging me for this basic meal item? I'm sorry, but Starbucks, I'm paying you $8 for this drink. Pay your workers better. I don't want to pay you $2 more on top of the $8 I'm paying for the drink. And same thing goes when it comes to like nail salons. If I'm paying you $60 to do my nails and I'm like expected to give you a $10 tip on top, like, it's a lot of money. Anyways, that's it.
I'll put this out here now so I stay accountable to this, but in 2024, I am no longer unnecessarily tipping. Before you start thinking I'm stingy or something, for service, I will definitely pay 20 to 25% on all of it. Restaurants, coffee, beauty services like haircuts and things like that. But the tablet tipping culture has gotten so out of control to the point where I now walk into a retail store and get a greeting card, like pick one out myself, go up to the register and check out, and there is a 20% suggestion waiting for me. I've heard of the tablets asking for tips at self-serve yogurt stations. Of course, in this country, we also have a trickle-down effect problem where businesses are not taking care of their employees appropriately. So therefore, the burden then falls on the consumer to support those employees' wages, which is not okay. So like I said, in the case of service industry jobs, I am more than happy to tip for my coffee being made, things like that. But like retail stores where no one is really helping you, like any retail, not just clothing and stuff, but I've seen it at alcohol stores, farmers market stands, individual little stalls. Basically where the tip of 20% would suggest 20% of the cost of goods. Telling myself the people pleaser in this because every time that tablet gets flipped on me, I get such pressure. We will be strong in 2024.
10 years ago, when you were getting your morning coffee, you weren't berated at the end with the flip of a screen with the question we all know and hate, would you like to leave a tip? But now it feels like every place we go asks us to leave a tip, including and not limited to grocery stores and even self-checkouts. But here's the real reason why tipping culture has gotten so out of hand, and this might surprise you. So this machine that essentially makes you feel bad if you don't leave a tip is built and produced by this company called Toast. Now, if you're a restaurant owner, Toast will literally send you all this equipment completely for free. Like, yes, they'll send you this iPad, this card reader, all this high-tech technology, but instead of it being $3,500, it's completely free. But then how the hell does Toast make any money? They're giving you this expensive, sleek equipment completely for free. Well, Toast's business model charges 3% of every single transaction that goes through one of the machines. Meaning if a customer spends $100 on the machine, Toast will make $3. Essentially meaning if a customer leaves a tip, Toast makes more money. So Toast has gone out of their way to make tipping as normalized and frictionless as possible. And one of the ways they do this is by making tips default for all restaurants and making you as a restaurant owner have to sort through hundreds of pages of documentation to figure out how to turn tips off. So essentially, it's my opinion that these guys are responsible for the tipping culture that we now know and hate. But I'm curious to hear if you guys tip when they turn the iPad around or if you guys press 0. Let me know down below.
Is anyone else really sick of tipping culture? I used to be a huge tipper. I would happily give 20% in a restaurant or even if I'm getting something to go. But I feel like we've switched into a generation where people just expect at minimum a 20% for not doing anything. And if someone has a bad attitude during service or maybe I find is rude, the fact that they just flip an iPad around and expect a 20 to 30% tip has become a little bit outrageous. And at the same time, getting food to go, I no longer tip when I get takeaway. To me, there's just no service involved. All you're doing is filling up some food. I understand it takes effort, but in my opinion, that's what you're paid for. I don't think getting something to go deserves a 20 to 30% tip. Same with coffee. I occasionally get Starbucks and my order is just a black coffee. So it takes 10 seconds to fill that pike roast up and you're asking me for at least $1 tip on a $3 coffee. That's a 33% tip. I have worked in service before, so I understand the tipping culture and I understand it does make a difference to people in the service industry, but I still think people need to work to deserve a tip. But let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that the service industry has gotten out of control? People just expecting a 20 to 30% tip no matter what they do? Do you think we should be tipping on orders to go? Let me know what you think in the comments and follow me for some more honest discussions.
So I'm not tipping anymore. I'm done. I'm out. Used to be you would give a tip if somebody gave a...
Okay, so I waited tables for 15 years. 15 years of my life. And I just got out very recently. What people like him don't understand is that if you don't want to tip anymore, if everyone decides they don't want to tip anymore, then that tip is going to be included into the cost of the food, because then the owners are going to have to pay the servers what they were making before. So it's going to be folded into the food, because then the owners aren't going to have enough money to pay all of the staff. So they have to include it in the cost of the food. So either way, you're paying the same amount. And if you are allowed to tip, you can adjust that. You could pay less. You can give a 15% tip like a fucking dick and then pay less than what it would be if that cost were included in the food. Do you understand? This guy's like, I'm not the bad guy. If you have to say that, you're the bad guy. And you know you are. I understand that not everyone likes this tipping culture. It is getting a little bit out of control, out of hand. Like, people want you to tip when you're like grabbing a candy bar and putting it on the counter. Like, no one's tipping for that. You didn't service me. But look, if the tip were included in the cost of the food, then the servers don't have a lot of incentive to like go above and beyond and like really be an expert and a professional at their job. They're going to be like the servers in Europe where they don't give a fuck about you. So listen, it is the way that it is. It's not going to change. Everyone just has to get on board. I mean, everyone is on board. They've been doing it forever. But guys like him, now that we know who you are, you're getting spit in your food 1000% and probably worse than that. So way to expose yourself, dude.
Okay, this tipping culture is getting out of control. Why am I being asked to tip a barista at Starbucks? And I get it. You guys are going to say, well, it's optional. Like, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Like, if you're cheap, just say that. First of all, I am not cheap, okay? I am all about tipping, you know, the waitresses, you know, the runners. Like, I get it. Get your hustle on. But my thing is, I mean, that's something that we've always done, right? The tipping culture has always been there when it comes to restaurants and things like that. But for a simple Starbucks, like, it never used to be like that, okay? And now I see all these companies just asking for a tip. Like, I went into a boba spot and the girl with the big ass iPad was like, oh, would you like to leave a tip? Like, babes, really? Like, you're really gonna tell me when there's people behind? Honestly, at this point, I don't even feel ashamed anymore. I just simply press hard no. Like, I make it known and I'm like, no. I was at Goodwill and they were like, would you like to donate? No, because that's just going to be a tax write-off. But anyway, let's get back to the point here. I'm just so confused because I was at Susie's Cakes the other day buying some cupcakes for Valentine. And not only did they charge me a 3% for the health, like employee health, which I get it. It was only like $1. But that's not the point. Why should the customer, the consumer, have to pay for something that the employer should be paying? For example, when I used to be a bank teller, okay, because that's like the only retail job I've really done. Well, I worked the Hollister for like 2 weeks, but besides the point. I used to do a lot of work. I'm talking about cashing checks, making deposits, counting a large sum amount of bills because I was a merchant teller at one point. When I became a banker, I was opening up business accounts. I was doing home loans. I was doing mortgages. I was doing auto loans, sending wire transfers. I mean, things that are tedious, complex, things that take time. And never did I get a tip or a commission. I mean, if it's a sales job, yes. But if I'm making a large sum deposit, I'm not getting tip for counting $1,000 in singles from a vending machine. Am I supposed to be getting tipped? Shouldn't we be tipping the tellers? Shouldn't we be tipping the people at McDonald's? Which, trust me, I'm already hearing that people are also asking for tips at those jobs. When in reality, it's the employers that should be paying for the employees to have a sustainable, like, living wage. Why are we pressuring all the consumers to be tipping? Like, I literally left Starbucks seconds, okay? Within seconds, I was already getting a notification on my Starbucks app saying, oh, view your receipt, you know, because I purchased my coffee. And then it said, oh, there's still time to tip. Babe, if I didn't tip at the POS inside of the Starbucks, I'm not going to tip online. And you need to pay them a sustainable wage.
That is it for today. I appreciate you guys watching the video, and like, comment, and subscribe down below. And see you in the